All right, guys, welcome back to the Laid Down Podcast here for
What's up, man?
episode 6 with Ultra and an appreciative Lenny today,
Yes,
who
very
is
appreciative.
very, very just in a good mood right now, even though his Niners lost in the NFC Championship
Dude,
game.
I really don't even I haven't even thought
They
about that
blew
game
it.
in a
Kyle
while.
Shanahan can't hold the lead. Jimmy
And
Garoppolo can't
dude,
throw.
we got Anthony Lynn, bro. He's the best clock management coach in the NFL.
Okay, so be honest, do you expect to hold any sort of lead now?
It depends how good not Shanahan. What's his name? Trey Lance. How do I forget Trey Lance's name? It depends how good Trey Lance is. You saw, you see with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You even see with Stafford and Sean McVay. You see with the elite quarterbacks. Russell Wilson did it for a while. Big Ben did it with Mike Tomlin. If you have an elite quarterback, it doesn't matter who you have an offensive coordinator unless you're Anthony Lynn with Justin Herbert. But that's besides the point. But it really does just matter how good Trey Lance is. They get the ball like the most of any player in the game. Obviously, they dictate how the game goes 90% of the time. So I don't know
Yeah,
how good
I
he's going to be
agree
next year.
with that to an extent, but when I see quarterbacks like Matt Ryan and Derek Carr struggling to crack a winning record,
Struggling.
and then I see Jimmy Garoppolo out here in the NFC Championship every other year, it's like the team matters a lot.
It does matter, but that's not the point.
The quarterback dictates winning, but
I think
come on, man! Like
the
Derek
roster
Carr
no,
cannot
okay.
be going out earlier than Jimmy Garoppolo. Aaron Rodgers can't be going out earlier and can't be losing to Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think rosters dictate win total, but I think quarterbacks dictate big games, if you know, big game moments, if you know what I mean.
When it comes to making the playoffs, it's usually it's the roster. When it comes to actually winning the Super Bowl, usually, obviously, you have Trent Dilfer in there, 2015 Peyton.
Flacco was really amazing in that run, so I don't think
Flacco and
Eli,
that much. They were great in their playoff runs, but you'll have 2015 Peyton, So
at least he had the leadership role though, because he was Peyton Manning still,
and he was the smartest quarterback in the league still,
exactly.
even if he had zero arm talent left.
He was at least a game manager. That's better than a lot of other quarterbacks.
And he did have a decent, he was pretty decent actually in the AFC Championship. But
it's just it's Peyton Manning, you expect better than just not good. You know what I mean?
But I think what hurt him is the neck surgery, because it completely zapped him of all his arm strength.
For sure.
And to be credit to him, he had 3 really good years after that. But I think by 2015, it'd just been too long. He'd taken too many hits. And, eventually it just kind of caught up to him. Still was able to win the Super Bowl, though. But we're not talking about Peyton Manning. We're not talking about holding leads. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about what we learned this NFL season. Mitch actually asked us the question last year in the Discord about, what did we learn this season?
Takeaways. We got to learn something.
What are our biggest takeaways? So we're just going to kind of talk about what we learned. I haven't really come up with anything. I haven't really, thought about it, but I'm going to just go through the season and I'll come across a couple of things that I've seen. Lenny, do you have anything just off the bat?
I've had this suspicion for a while. I haven't been watching.
You've had a lot of realizations recently.
Well, I thought about the NFL as a sport.
Lenny, have you been thinking about a lot?
Yes, I have been thinking about a lot. I've had time to think about stuff in the last couple months or two. So, coaches, not necessarily head coaches, because head coaches aren't necessarily the
coaching staffs,
but coaching staffs are way more important than people give them credit for. I think they are imperative to a team's success and non-success when in the playoffs. I think it's the do or die thing. I think you can have an amazing roster, you can have that quarterback, and if you don't have the coach or the coaching staff that's going to get you over the hump, I just don't think you're going to do it. It's hard to say that. When's the last time a bad head coach or just a bad coaching staff won a Super Bowl or even went to an AFC Championship game? Maybe the Jags in 2017.
I don't know if they were terrible.
They weren't terrible, but they weren't
good. If you're just talking straight up bad, maybe the Colts in 2014.
Yeah. Okay, that one's one. Maybe the Bears and when they went on their run a while ago.
They did have Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator.
Really?
And I don't think Matt Nagy wasn't a good coach, but he wasn't just historically awful.
No,
He had a career
yeah.
winning record. Like
I think he's definitely a little bit more hated on, especially the fact he didn't have a quarterback in Chicago. But that's besides the point. But what I'm trying to say is that
coaching
people
staff's
in the
bad.
preseason look at rosters. They're like, oh, Julio Jones went to the Titans, right? They got Derrick Henry. They have AJ Brown. They have a really good defense, improved defense, and then they lost Arthur Smith this season. And you saw what a lack of coaching did for this team. It cost them. It
Offensively,
did.
I actually thought Mike Vrabel had a great year. Like
Yeah,
they
no,
had
I
so many
he's probably
injuries.
coach of the year. I mean,
They had
for
so
what he
many
did.
injuries, and like defensively, like his defensive coaching, you saw they didn't have a good offensive coordinator, which is why their offense was terrible this season. But
Exactly.
their defense was actually good, and I think that's a lot to do with Mike Vrabel. You look at the NFC playoffs. Look at the teams that lost. The Eagles had a rookie head coach who had no experience.
Nick Sirianni.
The Cowboys were a terribly coached team at head
Mm-hmm.
coach. Weren't terrible with the coordinators, but Mike McCarthy, come on.
I mean, yeah, he's making all the decisions. So yeah, he brought the losing culture to
You look at who else
Dallas.
lost. Who lost the other game?
The
Uh, the,
Raiders, you can even
the
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 Raiders had Rich
Packers. The
Bisaccia. I mean,
Packers had a bad game plan in the NFC
their special
divisional
teams
game.
coordinator. I mean, it was just a
Terrible
small
special
thing
teams.
as their special teams coordinator.
LaFleur
I
was
mean,
trying to try and show everybody, oh, I'm better than Shanahan, and by doing that, he probably cost his team the game if he had
I,
just done what he usually
I,
did.
I think what people forget is talent is only useful if put in the right situation, right? Like if
Yeah,
Michael Vick had Kyle Shanahan and he just was able to get rid of all the stupid stuff in his brain when he was first like a player, we're probably talking about him as one of the best players ever. I mean, like I'm serious, like that.
but
Like
he
you know
would
what I
never
mean?
have won a Super Bowl.
Like situations matter for every single player in the
Got to put that in
NFL,
every time with Shanahan.
and coaching staffs are what like the base tree trunk of it. You know what I mean?
Coaching
That's where
staffs
everything.
matter more probably than anything in the NFL.
Yeah, and we talk about these players like they're
And
the
like
do or be all by
honestly,
these teams, but it's not.
you look at Tampa Bay. If Tampa Bay had Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, they probably are still playing.
I think that's a testament to Tom Brady, though. Like I know
Right.
Tom Brady just retired. Everyone's talking about it, but like he really didn't have a good coaching staff this year. I don't think he did. I think Todd Bowles is pretty good. I don't think Byron Leftwich is great. But his head coach wasn't great. But like the point is,
Arians, I think, was the
they
big
were Super
problem.
Bowl contenders, and they just didn't have a great coaching staff. I think that's fair to say. They
And
didn't
then
have
you
a
look
great
at the
coaching
teams
staff.
that made the NFC Championship. It was Shanahan and McVay, who, I'd probably argue with Sean Payton now gone, probably the two top coaches in the conference. And I think the Rams were probably the better coach team in the game. They probably made less mistakes when it mattered. And I do think, unfortunately, Lenny, I do think McVay is a little bit better than Shanahan just based on what he's
He
done.
probably is.
And I mean, Shanahan did run off 6 in a row, but McVay won the game that mattered most.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but we saw it with that. I think the bigger takeaways, they both got there they were both underdogs in their divisional games. And in the AFC,
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
in the AFC, like you look at it, the Bengals were a well-coached team this year. The Bills, outside of the last game against the Chiefs, were a well-coached team. Obviously, the Chiefs are a very well-coached team. The Steelers and Patriots have
Mike
two.
Tomlin's not good in the playoffs.
Tomlin's not okay. So Tomlin is overrated, but he's still a good coach.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's bad for sure. Like he's definitely good. He's
And then
not
Belichick's
bad.
obviously the best coach of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I mean, Rich Versace, you got to give him credit. Like they
Yeah, they for the last little run that we had with the Raiders, like the last couple of games, the end of the stretch, they like the coaching was actually good. Like what we saw with the Raiders in the last 2 years before the Versace era, like the 6 games he coached, but whatever. Is John Gruden just would stick to the same game plans and he would not change up the playbook or he wouldn't do something differently. He wouldn't change a lot. But with the switch,
felt like it was very car reliant at the end.
Exactly. Yeah, but we were finding different ways to win with our coaching staff and our team. And basically, what I'm trying to say is, when you look at a team, don't just look at their talent. I think you look at the coaching staff first, and you see what those coaches can do with the talent, and then try to figure out how good they're going to be in the season.
And you even look at teams like like the Eagle or like the Ravens and like the Saints that were very injured this year and we're still like in the playoff race until the last week of the
Yeah,
season.
I mean, if we lost to the Rams when we were down like what 3 scores against the
Right.
Rams in that Week 17 game, they're in the
And
playoffs. I mean,
if the
like
Ravens had beaten Pittsburgh, they'd have made the playoffs as well.
that's crazy, bro. But
And
yeah, yeah.
like even like my Falcons, the fact that we won 7 games with the worst roster in the Matt Ryan era,
Arthur
like if
Smith did a
Arthur
good
Smith
job.
deserves a little bit of credit there.
I think he's a good coach. I think he's all right.
Um,
I think you guys are gonna have a good coach.
looking just, I mean, you look at the worst teams.
I think the
Carolina.
Jaguars,
Carolina was a horribly coached team this year. Jacksonville, terribly coached team. Giants, terribly coached team.
terrible.
Lions,
The Vikings,
honestly.
you can count the Vikings.
Minnesota,
The Vikings
disappointed
have
because they
so
don't have
much
a coach.
talent.
Seattle,
so
disappointed because Pete Carroll proved he's overrated and he's not what he used to be.
Yeah, because he doesn't have Russell Wilson. He didn't have Russell Wilson this year. It's simple as that.
Denver, average coach, average record.
Mm-hmm.
Washington, average coach, average record. So
yeah,
coaching matters. Coaching really does matter.
It matters more than people say it does.
You look at who's in the Super Bowl, I think it's a Coach of the Year candidate with Zach Taylor, who I don't consider him an elite coach yet, but he's had a very good season.
No, okay. He's had one really good season. I like Zach Taylor as a coach, but come on, we're not saying he's elite yet. I mean,
but I do think I would put McVay in like that elite tier.
Oh, no, for sure.
He's proven top. I think when you're looking at the best coaches, which Peyton gone now, I'd probably go Belichick and Reed are still 1 and 2. And then I think if McVay does win the Super Bowl, I think he's probably 3rd. I do. I think the one thing that separates McVay and Harbaugh is the Super Bowl.
Do you think Andy Reid goes down a tier? Because I feel like I kind of realized a little bit that like his quarterback does bail him out in situations. Like I don't know. I just brought that up.
I look at Alex Smith and I look at how much better he got as a Chief than he was with the Niners, and I also look at how I think Mahomes. It's interesting. I feel like Reed designs plays to where Mahomes can just take the easy stuff, but sometimes he's just like an idiot and he doesn't. I feel like I don't think he really gets.
I think that's pretty fair. I think that's fair. That's fair. I just brought it up.
The other thing that I think we've seen is we're seeing the difference in a lot of these games, like just in the playoffs. The team with more special is usually winning.
Is this your first like thing that?
Yeah, this is what I've just kind of noticed. So you look at the playoff games this year. There was Raiders, Bengals. You look at the Bengals; they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
That's special.
The Raiders don't have anything like that.
I think Crosby's the only thing that can come close to it. Waller, maybe, but he was injured at that point. I think that those were the only 2 real players.
You look at the Patriots, there's nothing special about New England outside of their coach.
No,
and the Bills are also a well-coached team, and they don't have Josh Allen. Like, come on.
Nope.
You look at Steelers, Chiefs. Do I even have to talk about it?
TJ, I mean, I don't know if that one specifically. They do have really good players, though.
Special players defensively don't make the impact that a special quarterback or a special receiver do.
Okay, so like for our defense, it would have to be a collective effort of special defense and not just special defensive players.
Yeah, it'd take like 2015 Denver.
Okay, all right. I get what you mean. I get what you mean.
Where you're not taking TJ Watt over Mahomes and Reed and Hill and Kelsey.
Some Steelers fans would tell you different.
Steelers fans would probably still do it, but
they would definitely do it.
Niners, Cowboys, what was the difference really in the game? Deebo Samuel was the special player in the game. He was. And Kyle Shanahan was the special offensive mind in the game.
You can even just list off the Pro Bowlers they had this year on offensive line.
And Nick Bosa was the special pass rusher in the game.
Yeah.
Defensively.
I think you're totally right about this. I think you're hitting this on the head.
You look at Tampa Bay, Philadelphia. Tom Brady. The Eagles don't have anything like that. I know they have this special run game, but
no, Jason Kelsey, bro. Jason Kelsey's just as good as Tom Brady. He beat him in the Super Bowl, bro. Come on,
just as valuable too. You look at Rams, Cardinals. The Cardinals Kyler can be special, but there's also times where
He
he's not.
wasn't special in the game, though. That's the point. Like, he
But the
wasn't
Rams,
that
you look at the
kind of
top end
player.
talent. They have Stafford, Cup, Whitworth. They have a special coach, I would argue, especially compared to Kingsbury.
All
They
right.
have Von Miller, they have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. They have all these superstars, all these special players. Cardinals don't. Cardinals really don't. You look at
They used to. I mean, if they played in 2014, they'd probably win the Super Bowl this year, right?
the divisional round. I mean, Burrow and Chase again, special quarterback and receiver beat the running back that got
I mean,
shut.
okay, yeah. What about Derek? Okay, I'm arguing here just to argue, but like Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, those are two really special players, right? So
The
I mean,
problem, though,
is the
Tannehill
coaching?
wasn't special.
Oh, okay. So like the quarterback
The
wasn't special in
quarterback
this
is like
case.
times 3.
All
Like,
right, I think that's fair. The running back and the
and the running
quarterback are
back
definitely
was,
have a
let's be
lot
honest,
more of a
Henry
difference in the
wasn't a
game.
special player in the game.
No,
He was
no,
clearly hurt.
he was very hurt. He
Um,
didn't look like Derrick Henry.
Chiefs Bills, honestly, both teams were just as special. Chiefs just happened to win the coin toss. So,
Yeah, no. Chiefs just happened to play Sean McDermott. That's all that happened.
Niners Packers. I mean,
Aaron Rodgers wasn't special.
Aaron Rodgers wasn't
Devontae
special.
Adams had a good game, but I
Devontae
mean,
Adams was good. It wasn't his best game.
he didn't have chunk plays. That was kind of like
And
the problem,
again,
which is the
the
special
special
part, I
part of the
guess.
game was the Niners pass rush and D'Amico Ryans.
That's really interesting. This is really interesting.
This,
I've never thought of it like this. This is
you
really
think you look at
insightful.
Rams Bucks, that was a really close game. But at the end of the day, the Rams had the quarterback and the receiver. The Bucks had the quarterback, but with their guys out, and the Rams had the ball last. And you look at the pass rush difference. The Rams had the special pass rush. The Bucks didn't. Rams were probably the better roster in the game. Let's be honest.
I'm going to add something here. This is piggybacking what I said earlier. I think that the team that wins these things is when those special talented players, right, are put in situations by their coaches to be special. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think I really need to expand upon that anymore. It's just when you have, like, let's just look at Stafford for a second. I mean, his best coach ever besides Sean McVay was Jim Caldwell, right? I mean, like,
so he had Schwartz, he had Caldwell, and he had Patricia.
I mean, like, do I have to say anything else?
Yeah. And now he has
he had Calvin Johnson. It didn't matter. He had Jim Caldwell. I mean, like.
And then you look at the conference title games. Burrow was more special than Mahomes when it mattered. When it mattered, Burrow was more special.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in the Niners Rams game was a perfect representation of this. Stafford was way better than Jimmy Garoppolo was.
Yep.
Yep. So and the Rams pass rush again dominated the game. So we're seeing all of these teams with these super elite special units in the game. They're winning the game all the time. And I think, I always like solidity and consistency, but I think what we've really seen in some of the games this year, especially with some of the upsets we've seen this year, like Jacksonville beat Buffalo this year. That's crazy.
That is crazy. Urban Meyer, bro.
Sometimes just having a special element to your team that teams just really can't stop is better than being, just solid. Like New England was solid and everything.
I think another example of that was the Colts this year. They have, I mean, their defense has a lot of really good players. Like we just talked about that. Like it's not a special defense, but they had special players. DeForest Buckner, right? Bobby Wagner, or not Bobby Wagner. Oh, I'm stupid. Darius Leonard, bro. I can't believe it said Bobby Wagner, bro. But hey, you know what I mean? Xavier Rhodes is good. They have good players. But on offense, who do they really have besides Quentin Nelson on the offensive line? I mean, I know Jonathan Taylor, obviously, but how much is a running back going to matter? You know what I mean?
They're solid everywhere except running back, which I'll get to.
And O-line, but O-line too. But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know what you mean. It's the same thing with the run game. It's just their quarterback and receivers just aren't special. They weren't special in the Jaguars game. They weren't special in the Raiders game where we I mean, like they just when they needed to be special, they just didn't have the personnel to do it.
Speaking of running backs, 5 of the top 6 rushers this year in yards did not make the playoffs. Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, or 4 of the 6. Najee Harris technically made it, but come on.
I think
Dalvin Cook and Antonio Gibson.
Okay, think about this. This is just basically a joke, but you know how fullbacks kind of got phased out. But I think it'd be really funny if running backs got faded out and they were just wing backs and they
Just
just go
all
to an empty.
passing. I
It's
don't think we'll ever see
all
that.
empty sets. They're all empty sets. There's just 5 receivers. It's like let's just throw it up every single play.
What a lot of teams do now is they run the ball to set up the deep passing game.
We're setting up for third
Like you
downs and
saw,
shorts, like the West
Titans
Coast
try to
offense.
do it.
Yeah.
Niners try to do it. The other thing I've kind of learned is just kind of realizing it.
All right, go for it.
Receivers are probably outside of quarterback the most important position.
Yeah, I've watched a video on this. Jackson Cougar Sports.
You could make an argument that outside of Niners, Cowboys, and I'm just going through it here.
Just looking through the teams.
I would say the Niners have better receivers than Green Bay does.
Depth-wise, for sure. I mean, if you count Kittle, right? Which you kind of have to. Like, you saw in the Green Bay game that they just didn't have anyone other than Devontae Adams.
Outside of Niners, Cowboys, which in the game, the Niners had the better receiving core. If you're including tight end, if you're including tight end, I'd take the Niners guys.
Which is good. But
outside of that, in every single playoff game, the team with the better receiver tight end core won.
What? No way.
So I'll go through it.
Go through it.
Bills, Patriots. Do we even have to argue?
No, I don't.
Bengals, Raiders. Do we even have to argue?
No, we don't. I don't think we do.
Chiefs, Steelers.
No, I don't think. Deontay Johnson.
Niners, Cowboys.
That one's arguable. That one's close.
Which is why it was a very close game.
In the game, though, I think the Cowboys receivers were locked the entire game. I think the Niners secondary did a great job in that game. And you just saw Debo yakking it up.
Too.
Yeah, I think Brandon Ayuk had a good game. I think the Niners receiving core played better.
Bucks receivers are obviously way better than Philly. Rams receivers obviously way better than Arizona. Bengals receivers are better than the Titans receivers.
Without DeAndre Hopkins. With DeAndre Hopkins. No, it's a Rams.
No, it's Cup and
sorry, I just thought about it. I wanted to bring it up because DeAndre Hopkins was
Niners, Packers, the Niners have more depth.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae Adams,
more options.
Devontae Adams is probably the best receiver. But
it's just hard to say. It's
not, the gap between him and Samuel isn't to the point where Brandon Ayuk being way better than everybody else makes the Packers a better receiving core.
I mean, we're not talking about the player with a team with the best receiver. We're talking about the team with the best receiving core here. So, yeah.
And Kittle, too.
Kittle, exactly.
Chiefs,
another guy.
Kelsey and Hill versus Stephon Diggs, who didn't show up.
Mm-hmm. Rams, they're probably better anyway, though.
Rams had a better receiving core than the Bucs did in the game without Antonio Brown, without Chris Godwin.
They only had Mike Evans and Tyler Johnson.
Bengals Chiefs is the only one that you can maybe argue the worst one won.
And then again, it's an AFC Championship game too.
And both of them were really good and went to overtime. So.
Oh yeah, I mean that's really interesting though. I mean that's
and
really
then Rams Niners. The Rams had the better guys.
Like it's not the fact that. Like in the game, they even played better. It's like if you just were like that team had the better receiving core, they're gonna win the game. Like that's really interesting. I think that's a really good point you brought there. I think in a pass-oriented league, quarterbacks are so quarterbacks have the ball the majority of the time, right? And quarterbacks, what do they need? They need receivers and they need a coach. And if you can get them a receiver, you saw it with basically every quarterback in NFL history except for maybe Tom Brady. I mean, it just makes them great. It's just what happens. It helps. You know what I mean? You think about Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. What has Aaron Rodgers done without Devontae Adams post 2010 or wherever he won the Super Bowl? You think about even Terry Bradshaw. You can think about it with Lynn Swann, bro. I mean, you can think of Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, John Taylor, all these guys. I mean, receiving cores matter. I think they're probably the second most valuable position group. Well, what did we say was third? Just real quick.
So I'd say quarterbacks obviously first, not including coaches, and then receivers probably second, and then I'd probably go offensive line third because I think and pass pro at least because I think pass protection is very important. And then I'd probably go pass rush.
I disagree.
Then you'd go probably cover guys secondary, and then you go run defense and linebackers. Then you probably go to run game, or no, you probably go to run game before run defense, And then
Yeah. I'd probably put run game
as
over run
special
defense.
teams, least important, but it still does matter. Just look at the Packers
Yeah, I mean,
Niners game.
yeah, exactly. You saw them win
You
a
just
game
can't be
with the because of
historically
that.
awful. You don't have to
You
be.
need to do your job. You
You
need
just
to
need
just
to
do
be
your
the 20th
yeah.
best special teams in the
Call
league,
call for fair catch every time. Don't drop it and like cause a turnover. Just do the
and
bare minimum.
have a kicker that kicks 80%, and
Here
you'll be
here
fine.
I don't. We can just segue into this as the next thing, but I think corners are more valuable, or just secondary in general, like covering, than edge rushers. I mean,
In run,
I don't.
it's more important than run defense. I think having a great pass rush is more important because you don't really necessarily need corners when you have a great pass rush, especially against worse offensive lines,
Okay.
because they don't have time to throw. So they can't test you downfield. As if you have at least fast enough linebackers, you can take away most of the short stuff. So I think against the better offensive lines, you'd probably rather have the elite corners because you're not really expecting to get to the quarterback a ton. But against, like, say, if you're playing Atlanta, you'd rather have a better pass rush. If you're playing Tampa Bay, you'd rather have better corners. So it's kind of
Uh,
how I look at it.
my argument to that, I have a couple things. Okay, so number one, uh, there with the Shanahan scheme being introduced like recently, like this is kind of a new thing that people are starting to do, right? We're scheming up the out of the defensive line. We're finding ways for offensive coordinators to scheme away the defensive line. That's just something that's happening. It's not. It's really hard to scheme away a secondary because the whole game is based around receivers right now and quarterbacks. And I think what you saw with Joe Burrow this year is pass rush. I mean, he got sacked what 9, 8 times, and he still won the game. I
I
mean,
could
like,
argue, though, does he win the game if Tannehill doesn't throw 3 interceptions?
no, probably not.
So,
But wait, okay, let me keep going. All right, so you can also look at the Washington this year. Washington was a team this year who had a really good pass rush for most of the year, but they just got the ball out like wing, wing. They got it down so fast that no one noticed because their corners were garbage. They played terrible this year. Flat out,
that's
simply, they
fair.
played terrible this year. And when I'm looking at, okay, let's go another game. Patrick Mahomes versus Joe Burrow this year. In both games, you saw Patrick Mahomes when the secondary is doing good and people are getting covered and it's hard for him to see anything downfield. You see these quarterbacks get impatient. They get impatient and they're like, and they just start making mistakes.
I
And it,
I don't know if that's so much a secondary thing as it is Mahomes' problem. Because,
okay,
like,
that's
I
fair.
don't think if that were to happen to Aaron Rodgers or Tom
No,
Brady,
Aaron, that did happen to Aaron Rodgers though. You saw it because he wasn't looking at his secondary options.
but the
If you look
pass
at on
rush also
Twitter,
dominated.
if you look at on Twitter, there was plenty of things. There's plenty of screenshots of wide open Alan Lazard, of wide open whoever the random tight end had besides Robert Tunyon. But okay, so my main point is I think with these quarterbacks, we've gotten to a point where they're just super like they want to get the big play downfield. Like most quarterbacks in the NFL want to get the big chunk play. Like it's just what it is. And in a league where your receivers are the second most important position, having the ability to get rid of those players or at least limit them as much as
I
possible. I added, okay, let me just finish real quick. All right. Added with the fact that quarterbacks are increasingly impatient means that, to me at least, that I think corners are more important than pass rush. But I mean, we're just talking about this. I
I
don't really
think it
care.
just kind of depends on who you're playing, to be
I think
honest.
I think it matters more in a big game because better quarterbacks are more likely, and better quarterbacks and better coaching staffs are more likely to take advantage of a better pass rush than a better corner group,
But
like a
then
better
what happened
secondary.
in last year's Super Bowl?
That's true. I think that's an extreme example, to be fair, though.
What happened in the 2015 AFC Championship?
That's like 5 years ago.
It's still the same era.
That's true. That's 6 years
So,
ago. I think it's
what
close. I
happened
think
in
it's
the two
close.
Brady? Because I'm so Brady'd out from Mitch. What happened in the two? What happened in the two giant Super Bowls?
Oh man. I
I
mean,
think
it's
it's a
true
really
though.
interesting discussion.
It is
But
interesting.
what
It's
else did
not
we
just
learn?
yeah.
I've got to go through this here.
Hmm.
What do you learn, Lenny? I want to. What do you want to say?
Huh. I think I don't know if I should talk about this because this is more of a thing we've already been talking about. But situation matters for teams, for players. you can, I mean, like we just look at face value, we look at their stats, and we watch how they play, and then we don't go any further than that. I
This
feel
was a
like
takeaway of yours this season.
yes, this is primarily due to the emergence of Matthew Stafford and his Super Bowl run.
Yep.
You could look at Matthew Stafford's career with the Lions at face value, and you could say in 2013, I don't remember what year it was. I didn't watch football at this time, but it was something like he had the top defense, he had Calvin Johnson, he had all these guys.
2014.
Yeah, and yeah, you could say that like yeah, he had all these stuff and he didn't win a playoff game. But then you got to think, you look at it face value, and then you look at everything else though. You look at he's playing for the Lions. I mean, his coaching staff wasn't very good. You could see that his defense
Just the
in that
vibe
game
of
didn't
the
play great. I mean,
organization.
exactly. I think we need to stop looking like okay. So we're entering this age where stats and like oh this player did this stat wise or did this and like a whatever. I think we need to keep looking at just the situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It feels like people are too quick to like judge someone for not doing something, even if everything is stacked against them anyway.
This is newfound Shanahan Lenny speaking.
No, it's true though. It's true though.
It's true. No, it's very true.
Like you're a Matt Ryan fan, right? Matt Ryan played pretty good this year. I thought he had a solid year this year, even though they didn't do anything. But like, I mean, his offensive line isn't very good. His defense is terrible. But like, I mean, his receiving core, his receiver just left out like the middle of the year.
Yeah, so Julio was gone and Ridley was gone.
I mean, like, and then people still blaming Matt Ryan, like it's his fault. Like,
no.
Well, I mean, like, you know what I mean. People need to look at situations like
you gotta like stats matter and like they're cool and all, but like you gotta look at like
cool.
what they actually have.
Yeah.
I think the Stafford thing's the biggest example of it.
Yes.
Like Matt Stafford, I gotta look at this real quick. Matt Stafford this year, compared to the rest of his career, is like okay, statistically,
two different players. I'm assuming.
Statistically, yes, Stafford is way better this year than he's ever been. Somehow didn't make the Pro Bowl.
His best coach was Jim Caldwell.
But like,
up until now.
Is it that Stafford all of a sudden became like Tom Brady this year, whereas he was Matt Stafford the last 12 years, or was it like he had to carry them every single week of the last 12 years, and now he doesn't have to do that? He still can because he learned that. I always compare it to he was like a kid that had to deal with siblings that weren't exactly easy and had rough relationships rather than being the trust fund kid with the cool car and girlfriends. But the second things go wrong, they're running to their dad. But Stafford, no, he knows how to deal with stuff, and I think it's just like. When you put a player, like we saw this with Matt Ryan in 2016 too, when you put a player in a really good situation like Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford, they can win us. I mean, Matt Ryan should have won a Super Bowl. Matt Stafford may go on and win a Super Bowl.
I hope so.
He does. I think situation's more important. You got to look at that.
Yeah. So. I did this list thing. I told you about it a while ago. I don't remember when I made it, but I made it like a week ago, something like that. I basically listed what, in my opinion, were like the best situations based on like some stupid criteria. But basically, at the end of the list, or at the top of the list, it goes Jimmy Garoppolo, and then it goes Matthew Stafford. And this is nothing to go against Matthew Stafford because obviously he's a great player. Like it's stupid to say he's not a great player, but it's something to be said about putting a great just team and just environment around a great talent, and I think people just look way too much at the end result than how they got there, if you know what I mean.
And this can go in the other way too, right? Look at Jimmy Garoppolo. Statistically, Garoppolo was one of the better quarterbacks in the league. When you watch him, no.
No. He's
like what? He's not a terrible quarterback. He's like the 18th best quarterback in the league.
He's like 18, 17, 19 quarterback.
He's
like, I think situation is just it's a team game. It's not the NBA where you can just score whenever you want. It's not like any other sport. This is like you need a team to win games and you need a team to play good. Like unless you're not if you're playing not quarterback and you're not playing receiver. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say. With quarterback,
So,
it's easier to
there
like
was a
dissect.
quarterback help thing on Twitter. Someone made this.
Someone else made it. Oh
Arjun
man,
Menon
this
made
guy's
it.
bum. I already
This
did it.
was from December 2nd, so it's a little bit, a couple month, like a
All right.
month before the year ended. So of the top 14, so of the top 10, the
Mm-hmm.
only teams that didn't make the playoffs were Lamar Jackson, who they would have made the playoffs had he not gotten hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Teddy Bridgewater, who is not very good. Baker Mayfield, who is not very
Who
good.
played terrible this year? And
Yeah.
his receiving core wasn't that good though,
So
but whatever.
you look at the top 5. Allen made the playoffs. Hurts made the playoffs. Jones made the playoffs. Kyler made the playoffs.
Yeah,
Brady
Hurts made
made
the
the
playoffs.
playoffs.
Hurts isn't even like a great quarterback. His team was like really
Mahomes made the
good
playoffs.
against bad
Rogers made the
teams. I mean,
playoffs. So,
that's another thing for win total in general. Like if you're looking for the next year to see how many wins a team's going to get, you can look at Miami last year. They won 10 games, right? I mean, now we see this is a Brian Flores product. We see that Brian Flores won them 10 games this year, or last year. You saw them just implode against actual good teams this year because they didn't get so lucky as they did last year. You know what I mean?
yeah.
There's
They're
context to
probably a better
everything.
team.
They are a better team, but they didn't play like the better team because they didn't get as lucky. And you have to look at that. You just have to look at it. You have to. I mean, Mitch did that. He was like made this whole Miami video about how they're overrated or whatever, and he was right because they were lucky last year, and he didn't think
Did the
they were going
same
to get
thing with
lucky
the
this year.
Chiefs.
He did the same thing with the Chiefs. I mean, whatever. We're not.
All right, so
I
of
think
Lenny's
we're done with this.
quarterback help scores,
Okay.
Carson Wentz was 5th, didn't make the playoffs.
Oh, dude, Carson Wentz is 5th in mine. All right, keep going.
Yeah.
All right.
Of guys that were in the bottom 10, the only guys that made the playoffs was Big Ben out of fluke.
Big Ben,
And
where'd I have him? Dude, I
Derek
have him like 25.
Ben was 25th.
I had him 25 too.
And then Derek Carr was 23rd. And let's be honest.
23rd. He is 23rd right here. I'm serious. He is 23rd right there. Dude, I think my list is pretty good. I mean,
Tom Brady in 13 feels a bit low.
I had Tom Brady. I have him 13 too. He copied my list.
Carson Wentz got it. Okay, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz exposed himself as just like, I can't with the guy.
Read off the top 10. I will tell you my top 10. I will tell you which ones are like. Just read it off because this is weird.
This is your list.
Wait, this is my list?
Yeah,
I thought you were reading some random thing on Twitter, bro. I thought you were reading something on Twitter, bro. What are you talking about, bro? You said something about Twitter, like that was the top one.
No, I went to that first, and then I was looking for your list, and it came up. So.
Fine, whatever.
All right.
I was getting excited. I was like, dude, this is crazy. I think
the other thing that we learned real quickly is like everybody makes it out as if home field and like winning the most games is a good thing and getting the bye. But what we saw is the teams that played in the weakest divisions. Who are the weakest divisions in the NFL this year, Lenny? The NFC North, the AFC South, the NFC South, and the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Who were the 4 most disappointing teams in the playoffs?
The Cowboys,
Tennessee Titans, the Green Bay Packers, the Dallas Cowboys, and probably Tampa Bay. Because Tampa Bay is not as disappointing, but they're still a little bit disappointing. Like coming off the Super Bowl, divisional round exit, not terrible, but not.
If it wasn't Tom Brady on the team, I think this is a pretty solid year for Tampa. I mean, if he didn't just retire,
any year Tom Brady doesn't at least like make the Super Bowl is kind of disappointing.
He didn't. I mean, he didn't even make the NFC Championship game. But whatever. It doesn't matter. He's retired.
But who were the teams that made it to the title game? Rams and Niners. They played in the best division in football.
Bengals had an incredibly great.
Bengals had a very tough. Like the Bengals had no bad teams in their division, really. No awful teams.
Ravens weren't like that injured when they played them, really, until they.
And the Ravens were not a terrible team this year.
No, they weren't. They were really well coached. They were just they executed well. I mean,
they lost a lot of close games.
Tyler Huntley played out of his mind, bro.
And they were injured. The
They're
Steelers,
hecka injured.
as much like I know we make fun of the Steelers, but they weren't a terrible team. They were just not a playoff level team.
They just weren't good enough. I
And
think they just weren't good enough.
The Browns were more disappointing than actually
They
terrible.
had talent though. I mean, the Browns had talent. They were a good
And
team. They
then
just didn't
the
have a great
Chiefs were the
quarterback.
other team. The Chiefs had the Raiders who made the playoffs, the Chargers who probably should have made the playoffs,
Hmm.
and then Denver who was not terrible. They weren't great, but they weren't one of the worst teams in the league. So I think teams testing themselves. It's kind of like taking AP classes in high school. Teams testing themselves in division were rewarded more than the teams who got like the Packers got
Niners
four
barely made
easy
the
wins.
playoffs too, man. That
The
was.
Bucks got a bunch of free wins outside of the Saints. Titans got
Hmm.
a bunch of easy wins, right?
I think after the Super Bowl, the Bucks kind of just went on like retirement mode. Like all the old
Yeah,
players were just kind of
the whole thing from Tampa Bay was so weird. It felt like you had the whole thing with Brady getting off the boat, throwing the trophy, and then like
yeah,
he was
that might have
drunk.
been the end of it. You know what I
I
mean?
think
Because like
that
they got
kind of I think looking back on it, maybe we should have known like okay, I don't know if that's necessarily the attitude. Normal Brady's just completely locked in the whole way. You
yeah,
know,
I think Brady was one of the only players on the team that were like really like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. I think a lot of the
Gronk
players were
was the
like,
same
we
way
already
though,
won.
of course.
Gronk, yeah, of course. I mean, anytime you come to the Patriot system, you're gonna at least have that.
You know, Devin White was pretty loud. Maybe looking back, the Bucks were a little bit loud in the offseason.
What do you
Maybe.
mean by loud?
Just like there were a lot of stuff about how like they were talking about going undefeated, that kind of stuff. Brady
Oh,
said
oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
would trade two of his rings in for the undefeated ring. Yeah, that kind of stuff. The whole
Yeah.
17-0 thing. I'm gonna be honest, I fell for it. But yeah.
I don't blame you though. They had a really good team,
But
man. I
the
mean,
teams in the Super Bowl played in the toughest divisions.
yeah,
So,
no, that's also a really good point. I mean, it's all about who shows up at the end. And I heard this saying, right? It's not about the preparation in that week for the game. It's about everything you did before that. You know what I mean? Matthew Stafford didn't get to the point where he is playing right now because specifically he's on the team right now. It's because of all the stuff he had to do to get to this team in the first place. You know how hard it was for him to be in Detroit and have to play with those teams. I mean, like, I mean, to just go to a situation where he
having to
just
go
doesn't
to
have to
work
do as
every day
much. I
knowing you
mean,
got to throw 4 touchdowns to win.
uh, I mean, like, it's just something to be said, like the preparation aspect. And when you know, like, when you prepare harder in the regular season, like more consistently, things are it's just easier to do stuff. Like it's a repetition thing. Like if I go to sleep at a certain time, repeatedly, I'm gonna go to sleep better at that time, right? I'm gonna get up early. I'm gonna do whatever. And if I choose not to do it as often, I'm probably gonna have a harder time to do it, regardless of how good of a sleeper I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying. It
Lenny,
makes sense.
looking at this,
What are you looking at
outside
now?
of like the Niners Packers game and the Chiefs Bengals game, the better quarterback coach combo won every playoff game too.
So the receivers, the quarterback coach combo. So that we've just been talking about that. We literally been talking about this the whole time.
Yeah. So like
Uh,
these are
yeah,
just a couple things that like I'm realizing, kind of.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it now because this is a pretty big like, you know, thing on your
I
brain
think
moment.
it's the other thing. This isn't really like something I learned. It's just kind of a note about the 2021 season. Felt like
Hmm.
there were more upsets this year than usual.
That's yeah.
It felt like there were less teams that were historically great and less teams that were just completely awful. Outside of
Um,
maybe the Giants at the end of the year were pretty bad, but the other nobody like the Lions beat the
they're terrible.
Cardinals, the Jags beat the what do you call them? Who did the Jags beat? The
The
Bills.
Bills, the Bills.
Um, Texans were kind of competitive. The
I
Jets
can.
almost beat Tampa Bay.
I've already talked about this. I know you're tired of me
Yeah,
talking about it, but
no, it's fine.
it's the new generation of quarterback play. I'm serious. It is what it is. Uh, in 2002 and 2001 and 2003, besides like Kurt Warner and the Rams, I really don't think there were these dominant teams like this when that transition
No,
period
we talked
happened.
about me and Mitch talked about the 2000s AFC. you look at some of the teams Manning was on and Brady was on, and the Chargers of that era and the Steelers. There's nobody like that. No,
No, that's what I'm
there is
saying.
no
Like
2006 Chargers. There's no '07
it,
Colts or '07
there,
Patriots
there just aren't teams that have an elite quarterback, coach, and receiver like combo. It's just they don't have
and
that doesn't
defense.
exist right now. And defense, yeah. It's I don't know why. It might be a cap space thing. It might be a players want to
It
play
is.
for other
Like
teams
we
kind of
aren't going to see
thing.
a team as talented as the '90 or the '84 Niners
Yeah.
ever again.
Um.
Maybe I thought this year's Tampa was like historic, like one of the best rosters I've ever seen, and we saw a couple of injuries. Oh, they're not actually that great.
It's just like there's so many young quarterbacks in the NFL, and we talked about it a little earlier before, but quarterbacks are the most important position in football. Everyone knows that. It's not even like a competition, really. And no disrespect to Odell Beckham Jr. and the receivers out there, Devontae Adams, yeah, but quarterbacks are more important than you. But
I'll say this: it was kind of fun to see. I think we saw a little bit of kind of defenses took back a little. Like it
oh
feels like
yeah, especially in the playoffs.
it doesn't. There's always an offense. Even like the last year's Packers offense, I felt was a really awesome offense. There wasn't really an offense. Maybe the Bucks or the Bills or the Chiefs when they were playing at their absolute best. But
It
outside of
wasn't consistent.
it
It
wasn't
wasn't consistent.
consistent. It wasn't even like the Packers were last year. It was there wasn't an offense that really was dominant. Like honestly,
It's just I think it's just a transition year. This is the year Tom Brady
yeah.
retired. This is the year Big Ben retired.
And
Last year Philip Rivers retired. I mean,
I'm
yeah,
looking at the
that's
points.
correct.
Like this was the sixth highest points average for a season ever, which sounds high. But last year was first. 2013 averaged more. 2018 averaged more.
That's
Funnily
really
enough,
interesting.
1948 and 1965 averaged more.
1948 wasn't
Yeah.
that like when Norm Van Brocklin was playing and
No, that was like Sid Luckman.
Sid Luckman? Oh, jeez. All right, yeah, that's definitely not a good thing when Sid Luckman's getting more points than Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes here. So
All right,
that's
Lenny.
that's not a
Is
good
there
thing.
anything else? I think that's pretty much it for
I
me.
think I think that's it. I don't think there's really anything else to say except for coaches matter, receivers matter, and I matter. So I think that's it.
All right. On that note, that'll be the end of the Lay Down podcast. Shorter episode this week because there's no, we talked about Brady, talking about
Doug,
Brady's retirement, and then he and then it was like, oh, Brady may not retire, and then he ended up just retiring. So
we talked
our
about it
our,
already.
our
It's
whole
fine.
thing on Brady still technically is correct, even though it was a couple days early.
Wait, one thing we could talk about Doug Peterson if you really want to talk about
Oh
it.
yeah, you want to talk? Okay, talk about Doug
Yeah,
Peterson.
just real quick. I like Doug Peterson. I think he did a good job with the Eagles when they lost Andy Reid and then they had to go through Chip Kelly for a bit. I think he's a culture builder. I think he's just really good at building a culture, and I think that's just what they need right now. I don't really care about his X's and O's because I don't think he's great at that. I think Frank Reich did a lot of the heavy carrying in X's and O's in the 2017, 2018 days, but for the Eagles. But I think this is a good coaching. He took a year off. I think this is a good coaching hire for. I think this is a good coaching hire. I think that's what I think.
Yeah, I agree. He's won a Super Bowl.
He's won a
I
Super
don't
Bowl,
think it was
proven
his
winner.
fault for how it ended in Philadelphia. So
No, even though Abe would tell you he went fourth and
I
one, he
will
did read outs
say,
and every
prove
play.
it time for Lawrence. So
That's true.
that'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see how he does with the new coach.
Trent Baalke, bro, that guy's a joke. That GM, bro.
If he hadn't done what he did, the Niners would still have Jim Harbaugh, Lenny.
Yeah, that guy. Not a fan of that guy. Not a fan.
What do you think of Harbaugh staying at Michigan? By the way,
I like Harbaugh, so if whatever he wants to do, he's got to do. But I think if the Raiders really made a go at him, I think he would have went for the Raiders. I don't think they really did though. I thought they were going to try harder, but they didn't.
all right, that's going to be it for the Lay
Vikings
Down
scooped them off.
podcast. Thank you, Lenny, for joining, and thank you guys for watching. Peace.